Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. I am Dave Biddle, and I'm joined by Patrick Murphy. Patrick, a lot to digest yesterday. First day of spring ball. First hour of practice was open to the media. We were there. Steve Hellwagon was there. And then we got a chance to interview Urban Meyer after practice. Let's start with some of Coach Meyer's comments. I mean, there's so much to leaf through here. Right guard is one thing I was very interested in, and I asked him about the right guard situation, if there was any favorites. And he said no, not at this point, but the first name out of his mouth was Demetrius Knox. Then he said Matt Burrell's in the mix, Malcolm Pridgeon's in the mix, and he said, and maybe Brandon Bowen. And then later, Alex Gleitman got information that he's hearing right now Demetrius Knox is getting the first-team reps. Just react to that, Demetrius Knox getting the first-team reps, and do you think he'll be able to hold off some of the other guys for the starting job?
Yeah, it's curious because, I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. We did see when Michael Jordan went down at left guard last year in the Fiesta Bowl that he was the first guy off the bench. Now, I didn't think that he played particularly well in that game. Most of the offensive line didn't play that great in that game, so maybe it's accumulation thing. But it surprised me, I guess, that he was the first guy getting those reps instead of Malcolm Pridgeon, who I think most people expected to start there at least to begin the spring and be in the mix at one of these spots on the offensive line. But it's, if he's in there and competing and making an impact and has had a good winter and maybe, just had some jitters in the game against Clemson and, can be that guy. I mean, they need to find the best 5 guys, whoever that is. And if Demetrius Knox is one of those guys, then more power to him. He was a guy who was obviously highly recruited and a guy that they were excited about coming in. So I think the spring will be interesting to see if he can hold on to that. I think they'll probably use a lot of different guys there. I'll be very interested to see during the spring game just how guys do. Obviously, you can't take a ton from that just because of the way they break up the teams, but that'll certainly be the offensive line's individual positions will be certainly something I'll keep an eye on when we get to see them in real, live, so to speak, action.
I do want to remind everybody that in first practice of 2014, first spring practice of 2014, that team ended up winning a national championship, for those that don't remember. Antonio Underwood, a fourth-year junior, got the first-team reps. I don't think it was just the first day. I think it was the first week of spring ball, maybe the first couple weeks. Antonio Underwood was the first-team right guard. So, and I don't think the coaching staff really had any plans. Maybe they were just hoping he was going to surprise and he was going to, maybe keep that job. I just want to let everybody know this happens every year where there's a guy that maybe is in there and, he's an older guy. Now, maybe Demetrius Knox is going to hold on to that job. That'd be great. If he proves that he's the best guy for the job, great. But I tend to think it might be somebody like Malcolm Pridgeon or somebody else might end up winning that job. We shall see. I also want to ask you about middle linebacker, Patrick. Urban Meyer confirmed that Chris Worley has moved to the middle. Jerome Baker, of course, on one outside spot. Dante Booker on the other outside spot. And Urban was refreshingly honest about Chris Worley. He said, we think he has the mentality to play inside. The one thing we have to find out is can his body hold up physically because, that's going to be at the point of attack a lot. What did you make of Coach Meyer's comments? And do you think Chris Worley, his body will be able to, hold up playing middle linebacker?
Yeah, I like the idea of putting Chris there. Obviously, Alex had some inside information that this was going to happen, and we wrote about it a little bit, so it wasn't a huge surprise to see it. But I did think, as you mentioned, Coach Meyer was refreshingly honest about it. As for his body holding up, he's a pretty big dude. I mean, you look at him in comparison to Darren Lee, the guy who had the position that he played on the outside the year before. He's a bit stockier than Darren. Maybe not quite as much as Raekwon, but Raekwon, I think, size-wise is pretty close to what you want in a middle linebacker, especially at college. So I think he has all the tools, mentally and understands the game to play it. But, yeah, I do think that could be a bit of an issue, but we've seen undersized guys play in the middle before. I don't know if they'll know for sure about his body holding up through spring practice. I don't think they want to put him through the rigors necessarily that he might see in the fall. But I do like the move, and, it gets Dante Booker back in his normal position, puts Jerome Baker where they originally wanted him to play, where Chris Worley was playing last year, and we heard this time last year that those two were really battling for the spot all the way into fall. So I'm interested to see Jerome at that position. I think it makes a lot of sense because, again, like we said with the offensive line, it gets the best 40 guys on the field, most likely. But, there are some other talented guys behind them. So if one of those guys looks like a better fit at middle linebacker, I think, you go with what works best and not, the three most senior guys, I think.
Kendall Sheffield had his first practice as a Buckeye along with 9 freshmen that were early enrollees, and Kendall Sheffield is officially a third-year sophomore for those that are wondering. He redshirted his first year at Alabama, so he's not a junior. He's actually a third-year sophomore, though I doubt he's going to be around as a fifth-year senior. We'll see if he's even still around as a fourth-year junior, but I did find that interesting that he's listed as a third-year sophomore. I also found it interesting Damon Arnette getting the first-team reps at corner. Again, not a huge surprise there. Damon Arnette played a lot of football for this team last year, and they had excellent corners, and they're still rotating in Damon Arnette as well as Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward played a little bit more than Damon Arnette did last year, so those are your two starting corners right now, Denzel Ward, Damon Arnette. The question a lot of fans have is, can Kendall Sheffield be a starter? Can maybe Jeff Okudah or Shaun Wade get in there? How do you think that's going to shake out with Damon Arnette, maybe some of those young guys? Can they pass Damon Arnette, in your opinion, Patrick?
Yeah, I think the thought was that with Arnette seeing less and less snaps throughout last season and just kind of falling off the map a little bit, he did struggle some, that maybe Kendall Sheffield would come in and walk right into the starting spot. And, I think maybe we should backtrack on that a little bit, as we saw yesterday, because Damon, while he did struggle a little bit, he was young, he's learning. We saw the exact same thing with Gary Conley at Michigan State in 2014, and he turned out to be all right. So I think that Damon deserves the opportunity to start the season start the spring at the starting position and, really fight for it. Now, as you mentioned, Kendall Sheffield's not a guy who many expect to be around very long, so I fully expect him to get a good look. Last year they rotated corners, especially as they got comfortable with a 3-man rotation towards the end of the season. Coach Meyer talked about wanting to be able to do that again just because of the way they play, the demands it asks of the corner. So if they have the talent, and it looks like they certainly do, I think you could see quite a few guys rotating through there. I don't know if you want to go much deeper than 3, but if you have the talent and you're confident in more than that, I think, why not do it and keep these guys fresh for some of the teams that they face. But, I think Damon Arnette has talent. I think that last year was a bit of a wake-up call for him, and it could, motivate him to come out and really, really fight for that starting spot this spring.
Yeah, I would have been shocked, Patrick, if no matter how high the coaches are on Kendall Sheffield, and I imagine they're pretty high on him, even if they think that he's going to be a starter, I would have been shocked if he would have came out his first practice and been out there running with the ones. I mean, that would have been a slap in the face to guys that actually were playing a lot for this team last year, guys like Damon Arnette, Denzel Ward, whoever it might be that he would be out there in front of. So, yeah, that would have been – I think that was expected yesterday. So a lot of practice remains, 14 spring practices, 29 preseason practices. We'll see if Damon Arnette can hold on to that starting job. I tend to think Kendall Sheffield's going to eventually win that job. I also think the young guys are going to play. I think they'll rotate in. I don't think they're going to start, meaning Okudah and Wade, but great problems to have. They've really reloaded there. Speaking of defensive backs, Wayne Davis, a young man that redshirted last year, he was a high 4-star recruit coming out of high school. He has moved from corner to safety just to give them an extra body there. They were really down to 5 scholarship safeties. He gives them a 6th scholarship safety. So just your thoughts on Wayne Davis moving from corner to safety.
Yeah, I think somebody was going to have to do it. There was talk about some of the freshmen potentially, could either Okudah or Wade play safety. I think they want to give them a shot at cornerback before they make any decisions with moving one of them. This is a guy who's been in the program, talking about Davis, and they've seen what he can do. Safety may provide him a quicker route to the field with the depth that they have at corner. And just as you mentioned, there's not a lot of depth. I mean, after Malik Hooker left, Jordan Fuller, Eric Smith are probably the two front runners, but you've got Jason Witt and Isaiah Pryor, obviously Damon Webb on the other side, but that's about it. And so having another guy in there will, just help provide depth, keep competition high. I think it makes sense, as you mentioned, a guy who was pretty highly recruited. We've seen this in the past at safety. I think they look at these guys as defensive backs, kind of like you saw at the NFL Combine, and, who can play where, who has the fit at what position. And I think he can play at safety. I don't think there's any reason to think he can't from the little that we've seen of him. So, I think it makes sense. I don't think it's necessarily a done move, but, I don't see why this couldn't be his position for the next few years here as he kind of battles with, some of the other guys, especially here in spring practice when they need some depth.
Also at safety, Eric Smith is running with the ones, along with Damon Webb. Some thought Jordan Fuller would step right in for Malik Hooker, and he might. And maybe this is a case of just the older guy getting the first crack at it, and they have plans for Jordan Fuller. But I tell you what, I'm high on both Eric Smith and Jordan Fuller. I think that's, again, to use this term, it's a good problem to have because you're not trying to find a guy that maybe is competent in that spot. You have two guys that I think would be competent in that spot, maybe more than competent. So we'll see if Eric Smith can hold off Jordan Fuller. I think both guys will play. They'll probably rotate the three safeties to some degree, I would imagine. Maybe Isaiah Pryor can get in there a little bit as a true freshman, but I did find that interesting that Eric Smith was ahead of Jordan Fuller yesterday. And then, Patrick, before I let you go, obviously some transfers out of the program. Get your thoughts on this. James Clark won't be back as a fifth-year senior. Alex Stump will not be back, another wide receiver. And Tyler Gerald was just going to be a redshirt freshman this year. He has left the program. Urban made it seem like the Tyler Gerald situation was the most surprising to him. Just your thoughts on Clark, Stump, and Gerald leaving the program.
Yeah, Gerald was definitely the most surprising, as you mentioned, the redshirt freshman. And just the way it happened, no transfer announcement. Meyer said that, he just up and quit, which isn't the most ringing endorsement for the kid. Usually Coach Meyer's pretty good about talking about guys as they leave the program and kind of giving them his blessing. And yesterday he said he didn't really know much about it. He just up and quit, which is a little different than what we normally hear. But, so that's a little disappointing for him. I hope everything, health-wise and whatnot is okay. But, the other two I think make sense. They just, with the amount of receivers that they're currently working, I know you and I were standing right there watching some of these guys. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of talent, and I think it just got to a point where, it didn't look like they had a shot at playing. Two more guys are coming in the summer in Trayvon Grimes and Jalen Harris. So I think that it became a numbers game, and when you're a guy looking at it from the outside in, especially a younger guy, James Clark obviously is older, but Alex Stump still has quite a bit of eligibility. Can you go play somewhere else? And Alex Stump announced he would be doing that at Vanderbilt. I think it makes sense. Ohio State, you can get passed by pretty quickly if you're not up to snuff, and maybe these guys just weren't. But obviously wish them the best. Hopefully they go on to have good careers, and potentially move on to the next level.
No doubt we will be rooting for all of them, and thanks to the wisdom of Patrick Murphy. Really appreciate it, Patrick, and thanks to all listeners for tuning into the show. I appreciate it and hope you all have a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.